Aloha and welcome back to Wanderous. I am your host, Andrew Crusoe, and today we're going to explore the most famous cave in Nepal. Let's go check out the Gupteshwor Cave. Come along with me. Hey, welcome back. We're still going. It's still happening. The show is still going. I'm not giving up. And I want to thank everyone who has subscribed and commented over the last 6 months. These last 6 months have been a time of transformation and a lot of work. I mean, I wrote a book in the last 6 months, which is pretty cool. I wrote part 2 of the Kaleidoscopic series. But nobody's going to see that for a little while because I have to release the first book first, and I won't make this too timely. Let's just set our sights back. Let's go back a couple years when I spent 3 lovely months in Nepal. That's right. We're going to talk about the Gupteshwor Cave, which is pretty much walkable from Lakeside Pokhara. Maybe it's like a 20-minute walk. And I like to walk. If you've been listening to this show for a little while, you know that I just walk. It's like, I don't know if you know who John Roderick is, but I'm kind of like John Roderick in that way. I just enjoy walking and wandering around a city. I like stumbling into places, and you know, when you're in a car or a motorbike, you can zoom past so much stuff without thinking of it. But if you're walking, you're forced to take in the city in a different way, and you come across stuff you wouldn't otherwise come across, as when I was walking around Feva Lake, which is really near where this cave is. So I'd been hearing about Gupteshwar Mahadev. Gupteshwar literally means hidden god or hidden Shiva, and it is not only the most famous cave in the country of Nepal, but probably the longest cave, or at least the longest one that's mapped. It's almost 3 kilometers deep. Unfortunately, you can't really go the whole length of it. Certain things actually mostly because it's underwater. So a lot of it's underwater. That'd be a trip if you actually had the equipment to go. And there's also, there's some surprises that we'll get to. I also think it's funny that like a day or two before I went to the cave, I came across this poster, this sign along the street in Pokhara, which is, of course, it's a pretty big touristy kind of area, you know. People from all around Nepal go there. People from India come up there because it's a really good launching off point for tons of different trek routes, so many routes. So I was walking along the street and I saw this sign that showed photos of the bungee jumping, the rafting, paragliding, ultralight flight, from these little ultralight craft, trekking, sky cycling, which I ended up doing. That's just a zip line with a bicycle. I ended up doing that in India later on. Helicopter tour, which is very expensive. Zeep flyer, I don't know what that is. I guess it's like a zip line. And bungee jump. But at the top of this sign, it said, Adventure Time. And I just went right to, it's my favorite animated show. Adventure Time, if you don't know, is most people call it a cartoon. I mean, it is a cartoon. It's an animated show, which is actually, it's actually a post-apocalyptic, very mature show disguised as a children's show. Not that anything's inappropriate for kids, but it has a lot of levels to it. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you jump in. I think it really hits its stride in season 3. But I digress. I thought it was pretty cool to see a sign that just said Adventure Time, because that's the names of one of my favorite shows of all time. And it felt like a good omen. So, actually, that was the same day. Actually, I'm wrong, according to the date stamp. Same day. It was on my way walking over to the Sri Gupteshwar Mahadev Cave. Of course, when you get to that area and you're going through these little markets and these little pathways, the most efficient way is through this market with all of these colorful tapestries and singing bowls. There's a great photo I shot going into the entrance, and it says just 20 meters from here, because plurals are complicated. And the first thing you'll see is this very majestic spiraling structure, this very large, like a football field, spiraling ramp and staircase that is quite pretty and pretty striking if you look down. There definitely is this vortex sort of idea to the descent into this cave. Now, most of this stuff was built originally in the 90s when they finally started, I think it was 1991, they finally started fixing up the entrance. But this cave, and you'll see this incredible entrance in the photo set for this episode, for this week. Of course, if you don't know, every week, every Wednesday, as of the recording of this, I release tons of behind-the-scenes photos that complement this show, and I think make it an even better show, although I'm proud of this podcast. They give you even more background and depth, and you can really feel the vibes of these places even stronger when you go through. And obviously, you know what to expect if you see my gorgeous photos that I shot from these with my RAW camera, my waterproof RAW Olympus camera. And to get access to all these, it's just $10 a month. On my Patreon, you can cancel anytime. It's patreon.com/HelloCrusoe. And you get access at this point, I think it's probably over 1,000 photos. You can always go back. And also quite a bit of video as well, including exclusive access to my manta ray dive that I did this year. Very amazing manta ray dive. So I try to give people a lot of value for that. It's a $10 tier. There's also a higher tier. There's also a lower tier. You can look and see all the tiers and all your options for supporting this show. I really, really appreciate the people that continue to support this show. I have supporters who've been supporting my work through the books and the stuff with the podcast. I've had supporters that have been with me for over 5 years, and it really, really means a lot. And it encourages me to keep going, because as an artist, if you're an artist, you probably know that what we're really fighting is obscurity. We're really trying to find the people that will really appreciate what we're making. That's one way to think about it anyway. And there's tons of stuff out there. There's tons of podcasts now. There's hundreds of thousands of shows. You can be listening to anything. So I really appreciate that you're taking some time to listen to this today, because we're gonna have some fun today. This is an amazing place. So I get up to the ticket counter, and I thought it was pretty funny, and I included this photo for supporters too, but I'll just describe it. I took a picture of besides the incredible depths of the cave, which we're about to get to, which are just stunning, I took a picture of the ticket rate sign. And the prices for locals are written not in the numbers that you and I are familiar with, the numbers that are pretty much used everywhere in the world besides India and Nepal. They have their own symbols for numerals, which are quite old, and they're pretty clever with this. And they put what's it say? Nepali, yeah, Nepali adult, Nepali student, and I can read these numerals, and they're not that hard. The numerals, there's only 10 symbols, right, for numerals. But I just thought it was funny that they kind of were trying to hide the price, or maybe it didn't matter. Maybe they just figured they just prefer their own numbers. But I thought it was pretty funny that everything was provided in English and our numerals, except for the Nepali ticket price. I thought that was kind of funny. They even put the counter opening time, which was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But the price for international visitors was 100 Nepali rupees, or 62 Indian rupees, was about the conversion. And 100 Nepali rupees is still incredibly, very cheap for foreigners anyway. At the time, it was about 140 Nepali rupees was $1. So this was less than $1. This was less than the cost of a tea, But the locals, and I translated this and I made sure I understood, the locals, it was 50 rupees. And for student locals is 35. So I think that's really good though, because the strength of their currency is much less, and it makes it much more accessible to the locals. I could do a whole episode about how I do believe in tiered pricing, primarily when there are exchange rates involved. If you're coming into a country that isn't using Western money, basically, or Australian dollars, because they're not really the West. Australia is its own thing. If they're not using Western money, it's going to be weaker. So it's very understandable to charge foreigners a little more and put that money toward supporting the place, basically. Especially since it was also just so cheap anyway, you know. And a lot of times locals' earnings are, I mean, I think probably you're talking, if you think about it, if you convert it to US dollars, a local in Pokhara is probably earning maybe $150 a month, maybe 200 converted. Now, that's why when you go to markets there and you buy carrots or you buy fruit, it's pretty cheap because it has to be. But it might not be so cheap for a local. But I digress. Going into the cave is pretty trippy, and there are parts toward the beginning that you can't even photograph. I mean, you get to a part, I learned this later, it's apparently so you go down this spiral, right? You go down all these steps, and it's very pretty. It's right by lakeside. They have all these plaster works depicting gods and goddesses, you know, because this is a very holy place to them. And I learned this later. What you reach is a cow shed, because of course cows are sacred. And you reach a little temple that you're not allowed to photograph. They're very strict about that. And there's a Shiva Lingam there. And if you don't know what a Shiva Lingam is, I didn't know what a Shiva Lingam was either before I got to Asia. I should have done some more research. I should have listened to a show like this. But I didn't. I just sort of like, I'm going to go to Nepal and I'm going to adapt. And I was already feeling a bit overwhelmed with all of the adjustments being in Turkey anyway on my way to Nepal in the first place. So a Shiva Lingam basically is a representation. It's this abstract like object, which is a representation of Shiva, which is basically in the one of the trinity of Hinduism. And Shiva is the destroyer. So you have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. I think those are the three. Pretty sure. Shiva is the destroyer, the one that kind of renews and destroys. It's a creative force. And Shiva is a very popular deity. It's one of the most important deities in Hinduism. So if you go to any of these countries, you're going to see Shiva Lingam, which are basically, it's like a bowl with a pillar coming out of it, which is, you can Google pictures of this if you want to. But it is a metaphor for the cosmic union of the male and female energies. So one's a yoni and one's a lingam. You can probably read between the lines about what I'm talking about. So one of the reasons why people are so passionate about this cave, because they really are, is they discovered what they believe is a natural formation of a Shiva Lingam, which is not easy to see. It's inside of the cow shed. This is the shameful thing, because this is a very real show. You know, I'm very real on this show. I'm very real, and I share the vibes, what I experienced. And I'm being totally real with you. I did not see it. It was not obvious. And it was not, to be honest, it wasn't the reason I went into the cave. There are plenty of Shiva Lingams all around Asia. Believe me. There are plenty. It's fine. It's fine. The reason I went into this cave was because what was coming up next. So you pass the cow shed. You can go through, you can leave a donation. You go around. Hey, mind you, this is all, they've kind of paved the floor of the cave at this point. And that's the Shiva temple. And you keep going and you go past, there's a second part of the cave, there's extra stuff. And eventually you go through this tunnel, and eventually you get to very colorful golden colored walls. And it's because of the calcium and iron deposits. I think primarily like calcium in these type of areas. And you get to this spot where there's a spiral staircase leading downward. And the first photo I really like in this photo set is me standing at the bottom of the spiral staircase looking back up. And you can see where, and they brought in lights. It's not a super well lit cave either. It's not, don't go in with incredible expectations, but it's interesting to see where they've reinforced the ceiling over time. You know, they discovered this cave in the 16th century. They discovered it, and when they discovered it or rediscovered it, they found spiritual idols already in there. So people have been coming in here for a really long time. But in the 1500s, the 16th century, as we call it, they discovered it, put it on the map, didn't really do too much about it. Wasn't really a big tourist push in Pokhara for a long time. And then around 1991, they actually took some public funds and actually finished the entrance and made it pretty cool with the spiral staircase. But you get down there and you can see this cave has kind of been through a lot. They've reinforced the ceiling with concrete sort of like structures. They're not really pillars, but they follow the edge of the wall, which is probably a good idea. And when you get to the bottom of this metal staircase and you turn, you see this shaft of light. There's a vertical crevice, an opening. And if you listen carefully, you can hear the sound of rushing water. And if you look very closely, you look through the crack, you can see a waterfall. You can see the bottom of Devi's Falls, or Devi Falls. And this is not the only underground waterfall in Asia, but it's probably the most famous, or one of the most famous. And you're looking out, I'm going to try to describe this for the people who don't have access to the photos yet. But you look out and there's you go down this area and you're standing at kind of a little island and there's water all around you. And this shaft of light is coming in because there's light filtering in from the other side of the cave. That's why it just keeps going. But it's filled with water because the waterfall through this crack, you can see this waterfall coming through. So and there's tons of sedimentary layers, different colors, dark, yellows and reds. It's a really striking place geologically, and the energy of the place too. Pretty wild formations. Like there were rock formations along the wall that were like honeycomb patterns. It looked like a brain. I might put the brain one on my Instagram because it's pretty trippy. It's kind of psychedelic, and it formed naturally through a geological process I don't understand. I mean, I suppose it was just water erosion and that specific configuration of minerals, a mix of calcium probably and some other things, was dripping over thousands of years, right? And created this just crazy pattern, really beautiful pattern actually. And you can see the cave is still kind of wet. It's kind of, yeah, if you're standing in the wrong place, you will get dripped on the head. And that's distracting. Of course, this is common in such caves. The soil above, the rocks above are often somewhat porous and water will filter through. But there's a pretty wacky photos. As you can see, one photo makes it look like the cave's way wetter than it is. It's not a puddle. There's only one area if you're walking toward the staircase for the first time on the left, there's an area by the wall which has a bit of a puddle, but it's just overall a fascinating experience to get down there. And if you are in Pokhara, I highly, highly recommend it. People have also made little cairns, little stacks of rocks symbolizing good luck. They put that under a thing. It was so funny just looking up because it's a very much a vaulted ceiling, a natural vaulted ceiling. And looking up and seeing where they reinforced certain things and seeing where people could like sneak in the cracks if they wanted to. It was pretty eccentric as caves go. It vaguely reminded me of Yerebatan Sarnici, the basilica cistern in Istanbul. Of course, that was a human-made structure dug out by the Romans 2,000 years ago. But there was kind of a similar feeling down there. And toward the middle of the day, it got a bit quiet at one point. It was pretty nice because in the beginning there were like 15 or 20 people there. And yeah, here's the thing. If you've been caving before, you might be sort of unimpressed, but I think that if you're interested in the waterfall, which the rest of the photo set has, I've got a couple beautiful photos of the waterfall. I should talk about that too. I recommend going to the cave first and then do what I did because it is really worth a quick visit. It doesn't take much time. Apparently I was there for an hour. I was there for about an hour and I really just took my time and I had fun photographing the weird rock formations. That's what's great about these cameras these days. You have exact date stamps. And I was there kind of into the afternoon, which was my only mistake that day. When I was heading over to Devi Falls, which is a little bit, it's close, but it takes a few minutes to get over there, the sun had just set. So I didn't really get the clarity in the photos that I would have liked. There's one that turned out fantastic, but I had to have a pretty long exposure for that photo. I think I had to have a 1/10 of a second exposure for the waterfall, which is fine. You get the nice velvety kind of silk kind of look with the waterfall, but I had to really hold that camera steady to get a good photo because I was losing light very quickly. And it was the middle of November by this time. So Devi's Falls also, it cost like 25 rupees. It was cheaper than the cave. And you can go around, and I would return once later on as well. And you can go around and people are very excitedly looking at the falls, sticking their heads, over. There's a whole, metal fence. And the sheer geological situation is pretty fascinating. I imagine before they put in these fences, people got hurt because there would just be there's just drop-offs. This river just cut into the landscape. There's one photo I really like toward the end of this photo set where you can see all this lush greenery covering this pretty chaotic geological reality where the waterfall has just fallen down and then gone down. It goes in these levels until it's finally under the ground and enters the cave where I just came from. So it was definitely an enjoyable experience. I wish that I had gotten there earlier. Also, for people who support the show and get the photos, I have translated a sign I took a photo of talking about the 90-foot long cowshed. This is a photo, this is interesting, where the supernatural Kamdenu cow, flowing streams of milk from its udders to the Shivalinga, which we talked about earlier, and slaughtering the cow, can be seen and witnessed in the Gupteshwor Mahadev cave complex, the auspicious place of penance of the ancient Vatsayan Maharishi, was inaugurated by Chief District Mr. Mola Prasad Siwakoti in the year 2064 in Buddhist year measuring system. Ashwin the 6th, auspicious. I don't know when 2064 was. Let's find out. Actually, I just did some poking around and there are several different calendars, so I'm going to let that go for now. Who knows when 2064 was? The sign looked like it was 10 or 20 years old. Didn't look that old. But I do like to include translations of signs for people who support the show. It gives you some extra depth to the experience. But I loved it. I loved the cave. It made me feel like I was Indiana Jones in a way. It was very much an Indiana Jones kind of vibe to the cave. You're just going down this narrow, to get to the main area with the rickety metal staircase going down to where you can see the waterfall. To get to that point, you have to go through a narrow passage, which is very reminiscent of Indiana Jones kinds of experiences. So I really recommend it. It's extremely affordable to visit. You can do the whole thing in an hour, maybe less. And it is a fascinating place. It is a fascinating place. And the cave formation itself, the way that the rocks have created these weird brain-like structures, is pretty trippy. And I liked it. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to leave a comment. I really appreciate and love your comments. It's always great to get comments and questions. I endeavor to answer those as completely as possible. So next time we're going to check out the International Mountain Festival, the 7th annual International Mountain Festival, which was full of awesome art. It was really delightful. But there's one thing I wanted to mention. I can't believe I forgot this. I forgot about this. I forgot to export this photo. I'm glad I double checked. When I was coming out of the waterfall viewing area, that whole park is really kind of weird and full of random stuff. And there's an area, I recommend you look around at this. They have, first of all, they have these kind of like wishing wells. Don't yell at me. That's not exactly what they are. But they're places where you can pray, but they're like wells that are cleaned out. I think I have a photo of that and a story about that for further episodes. I have to double check. I think I went back. I know I went back there, and I'm 90% sure I have photos of that too. But it was, at this point, it was night. It was dark. But I was kind of wandering around like, what is this area? And I wandered into this area that has these stand-up statue things that have the head is missing, and you can stand behind the person, and you can, like, it's you've seen these things in like attractions where they have a painting, and you have a big board, and they have a hole cut out for the head, and then you get to be the character, and you go behind the board, you stick your head there. I imagine these things are like 1,000 years old. I feel like they probably did this in Mont Saint Michel, like, oh, look at me, now I'm the Pope. Well, maybe they wouldn't do that because the Pope might not like that, but you could pretend you were different people. Of course, before cameras were invented, they really couldn't do anything about it. But once cameras got invented, I'm like, why not have a fake body in front of me, which is what I did. So they had and take a picture. So they had this big, like, bodybuilder guy who was just wearing like a spandex, and it's a very silly photo. This is the kind of silly stuff you get to see when you support the show. But very silly photo of me just standing behind this, 6 foot tall, whatever, very tall guy. And they had a couple steps, and you stand behind it. Totally hid my body, and my head's popping out, and I'm smiling, and it's very silly. But the Nepali people were so excited. I was like the only Westerner there, and they were asking me questions. They were very friendly, and I asked one of them if they could. It was like these two guys, a lot of teenagers hanging around the falls for some reason. Maybe it's like a social spot. And they took a photo of me standing behind this fake body of a bodybuilder. It's pretty silly. It's a pretty silly photo. And the people were just that's when I started to realize like how, I already was, but just how kind of sweet a lot of the Nepalis are. They're very excited to meet people from other countries, and because they don't get to leave their country very much. That's part of it, It's very expensive for them to leave Nepal. So, yeah, behind every door, behind every corner, there can be a surprise. There were some other ones too. I didn't take photos of all of the pop-up, the stand-up things, but that whole area that whole area deserved its own afternoon, and that's why I would return there later on. So yes, thank you for listening to Wanderers. That's all I have for today, and if you have any questions about any of these places, please let me know. I really appreciate every subscription and every like and every follow. Show notes for this episode, because I believe I do have a video of the interior of the cave. If I have made a video, I will put it in the show notes. Show notes are always where you're listening to this, so they're either in the YouTube video description. And also, if you like this, if you're listening to this on YouTube, can you please subscribe? It really does help. Can you please make sure you don't miss out on any of the amazing stories that are coming? I have Mount Fuji coming up, which is a killer story. You don't want to miss what's coming up. That's my pitch for that. It's something free you can do to support this show, and it really means a lot to me. And hitting the little thumb up button too also tells the algorithm, this is something that was useful to me. This is something that somebody put energy and time into and care. And I do edit these with care. Because if I didn't edit these, you would just hear probably a lot of motorcycles and a lot of burps. I'm strong enough to admit that I'm not perfect. Did you know that? It's true. I'm not perfect. And neither are you, but you're still lovable. I guess I'll leave you with that. Take care, and remember, the world will surprise you if you open your heart to it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Don't smoke it. Don't smoke words. You could get word lung cancer if that was real. Aloha.